can't. It's not going to. Yep. I don't want to get those cameras. I'll take this one.
So it's not right. Where am I? Yeah, we're right. Oh, no, right now. When you all these mics are checked.
Right.
Still here, bro. What's your
All right. Welcome everybody. CHAMPS trade shows. This is going to be a seminar that's a real call to action, and I appreciate everybody coming out for this. This is really something that we all need to wrap our hands around, know what's happening, so we can be on pushing edge. So, without any further ado, I really appreciate the American Alternative Association putting this together. Listen, take this to heart, because this is really business to business. And I appreciate everybody coming out. And welcome down. So, I'm going to pass it on to the guys.
Is this thing working? Can everyone hear me all right?
Check.
JD, there's a hand.
I'm so sorry.
JD, there's a handheld back there if you want to grab that. So you
Handheld mic?
Yeah, it's all the way at the back.
Okay.
So you can introduce everybody. Yep. One second. And I need where and So if you guys are looking at this document, sorry we're a little bit delayed today. Rep. LaShawn Ford maybe stuck in famous Chicago traffic, so he's a little bit delayed, but we're gonna flip-flop regulatory compliance, the last panel. We're gonna do that one first, and we'll do state regulations either next or last. So just to introduce everyone on this current panel, to my left, we've got Brett Worley, CEO of MC Nutraceuticals, JJ, CEO of Arvita Labs and Mellow Fellow, and Nick Patrick, our Maryland State Chapter President. We're waiting on our moderator, Philip Snow, to come up, but in the meantime, we're happy to take some questions before we start our panel. Is there anything in regards to regulatory compliance that you all have some questions about? And if not, I'll ask a good question. If a regulator comes into a retail store and wants to regulate, let's say, inspect some products, what are some of the things they look for initially?
Packaging, number one. In Maryland, there's a huge push against any packaging that resembles candies, and you see these bags of Skittles and the bags of Doritos and all these things that literally are just stealing the branding from these massive companies. So I think that was a huge, and you saw it in Florida too, right? Where what do they call it? Operation Candy Crush,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of that's happening, and I think that's one of the first things they look at. They look at packaging, they look at labeling. They want to see QR codes that go to full panel COAs. They want to see milligrams, not 1,000 milligrams per gummy and stuff like that. I think that those are things that they're looking for when they come into the store. They're looking primarily the number one thing they're looking for is the packaging. Yeah.
So when we talk about like Doritos and Skittles and these lookalike products, I think it's, classically, that enforcement has been taken by the companies themselves, whether it's Mars Candy Co. or Wrigley Gum or, whatever the company is. They enforce their own trademarks, right? But now we're in this unique situation where we've got an industry that's spread across 50,000 retail stores, and oftentimes some of these lookalike products are produced by small operators.
Mm-hmm.
They're buying bags from China, shipping them in, and just putting some products in there, and God knows what, and selling it to small retailers. And so you have this, kind of public-private partnership where you need the government's help to enforce a private company's trademark. And that's where things start to get hairy, because the private companies have every right to say to the government, hey, you've allowed this new industry to spring up. How can we enforce this when there's 60, 70, 80,000 retail stores all selling a variety of products? And it's very hard without massive market consolidation to, pinpoint companies. So, anyways, just started out.
Apologies. So you were just speaking about kind of the ability for companies to police themselves and, how to enforce themselves or enforce against themselves or potentially other bad actors in the industry. In addition to what the FTC refers to as lookalike products, what other sorts of enforcement activities are you guys seeing that are being taken on the manufacturers of these products, or how are you forced to comply with some of these different manufacturing standards or requirements from a state-to-state perspective?
So for me, I'm specifically seeing now in Florida is they're going after THCA products. Anything that's really THCA, whether it's full flower or it says it on the packaging. Florida for a long time, since I got into the industry, has always used decarbonable, but with the whole THCA craze, people just went and started selling it. In addition to that, I know in Georgia, they don't want to see just flower jars. They don't want to see the bulk flower. That's really what we're seeing on our end.
And from an enforcement perspective, we hear from, obviously, the enforcement side, they don't want to see loose flower anywhere. So, if you are going to do flower projects, I would see, or products, I would suggest that they're pre-rolls or they're packaged to where you can't actually see the flower because, specifically in Tennessee where THCA is legal in statute, you still see law enforcement bodies coming after, and specifically recently in Memphis, you see them coming after the loose flowers. So if you are going to go down the path of THCA flower, CBD flower, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what flower it is. They're just going to see it as weed, no matter what it looks like, as long as it does look like weed. So
They want to see this deli style.
yeah, specifically that, right? Yeah.
I would suggest that it's both. It's pre-rolled and packaged. So when you send it to a lab, it's tested in final packaging. I know that a lot looks at that. So it's custom.
So I think, with that as an overarching theme, whether it be law enforcement officers hating jars, whether it be this, deli style model, is it easier, well, I guess it's probably a function of they don't really have a field test, or it's easily distinguishable between marijuana and between hemp. And, from a testing perspective, Chris, as far as determining, compliance with federal law, you just mentioned that maybe it's important to set it off as a finished good or a pre-roll. Is there any other advice you would say for people that might be considering selling THCA or something that they might need to adhere to, as far as what I've been told is time, light, and heat are your ultimate enemies when it comes to THCA flower. So how frequently should people be testing this? Is it something that one COA is your ticket to ride across the country? You being the founder of one of the best cannabis testing labs in the world, what would you suggest?
And honestly, there's a lot wrapped up into that question, Philip. Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, specifically with the flower. Obviously, we all are in this space. We understand what cannabinoids do in the floral form, and they're trying to cascade from the mother molecule, CBG, all the way to CBN, and during that process, you're getting all the other cannabinoids. Definitely maintaining environmental controls is imperative to that. Things like UV exposure, so sunlight, can create the decarboxylation in the delta-9, but there's a value for THCA providers and sellers and retailers to understand that there is a cautionary need to test on a basis, and I understand that there's a burden on that from the cost side, but that I've had customers tell us, like, Chris, you're not testing out of your insurance policy. So there's understanding that cross section is is valuable for people getting into this space, but people that are proliferating it as well, specifically as it comes to THCA in flower forms.
I think there's an inherent risk too, right? So if you
Sure,
are a store
sure,
owner
yeah.
or a distributor, you need to make sure that these products are tested, because you never know when law enforcement might come in and act on that. You know, we've seen it in Florida, we've seen it in Tennessee, we've seen it all over the nation, really, in Georgia, which just regulating these products, is make sure that you take up that insurance policy, because it ain't that expensive, so.
There's also a challenge in how it's being tested, right? Because if you're using gas chromatography, when you're testing THCA flower, like Maryland, for example, just opened up their own state-ran testing lab. You know, so there's a risk that you're going to assume that heat will be applied during that testing process, and you can get hit with a charge even if your flower is compliant. So you have to be aware of those risks, I think, at all times.
Yeah, in addition to the dry weight composition, right? So percent by dry weight. So there's a moisture determination that's done when we calculate THC levels in flower, and that's always going to elevate your values.
I think the overarching theme here is education. If you're
Yes,
selling a
yes,
product,
yes,
you need to
absolutely.
get educated, you educate yourselves. You can't depend on manufacturers, you know. I've seen instances in Georgia more, in Georgia, they depend on the COAs of the manufacturer, and then when they, you know, when they got in trouble, something happened, we came back completely different, right? You know, I've got a store owner in Georgia that he tests every product that he gets, just for that insurance policy.
Yeah, right.
Because it's not worth risking it.
But even if, I mean, you know, if you have 200 SKUs on the shelf on your small store, even if you don't test all of them, at least spot test them. I mean, and again, it is an insurance policy, and you can't, you know, say that, oh, the manufacturer did this, they're gonna be coming into your store. So you're gonna be the one liable at the end of the day, because you are selling it to the consumer.
So I think it's interesting because, you know, just in that, you know, microcosm of this conversation, we can certainly shift the narrative away from THCA to something else, but I heard about Maryland, I heard about Tennessee, I heard about Georgia. You know, I know, Nick, you have stores based in Maryland, you know, JJ, Brett, you know, you all have businesses that, you know, touch and concern, you know, many states across the country. Honestly, how do you keep up? I mean, how do you know where your no-fly zones are, so to speak?
Well, I have a really good attorney. I mean, short answer is my attorney's on stage with me. I mean, that is part of the answer. Is you know, and more than that, pick your partners wisely. You know, in this space is you know, if your manufacturer or your partner or whoever it is, if they can't answer some of the questions like you just posed to me just now, or they at least don't tell you, talk to my attorney, and that person isn't readily available, then you probably shouldn't be doing business with them. You know, the cheapest person out there might not be the person you do business with.
That's right.
So, you know, at the end of the day is make sure you trust your partners, make sure that, you know, if they are a bigger company, that they're doing everything properly, because that is important. So knowing your partner, I think, is the best answer to that, because, you know, if you are a store or distributor, like, the experts in the field should know should have answers to these questions, because, you know, it's easy for me to answer that question because I'm involved in the regulatory affairs across the nation. So, you know, picking people, especially the people that come out here and speak today, I mean, those are the people that I'd suggest you work with. And, you know, I might be a little biased because I'm friends with them, but, you know, these questions need to be answered, and it's not really the burden of the store to make sure you're compliant at the end of the day. You kind of have to trust somebody.
And that's all along the vertical, just like Brett mentioned, and that even, you know, filters through your testing lab. You know, I've had hard conversations with people on the stage and some of the people in this room, but it's how they use that information to ensure going forward that those problems don't come up.
So if you are a, you know, regional or even, you know, hyper-local manufacturer of these products, and you necessarily want to get bigger, you know, what would you suggest? How would you say, you know, this is how you can build your business up from a regulatory perspective, or from a compliance perspective, or even maybe from a legal perspective? I know we don't have any other attorneys on the stage, but I think every single one of you plays one on TV from time to time. So, you know, what would you guys suggest, you know, for people in the audience who are maybe looking to build a brand or looking to, you know, increase their national footprint?
So for me, what got me involved, and to answer your last question, what got me into understanding all the regulatory issues that are going on is getting involved with the association. So really, you know, hats off to JD, because JD's really taught me most of what I know. And guys, I've continued to learn and gain an interest in it. But that's step one, really, is join an association that's already done a lot of the legwork for us, right? When I joined Florida Healthy, when we were at risk of losing the business, I got a crash course into politics, lobbying, fundraising, regulations, things I'm doing right, things I'm doing wrong. And, as a manufacturer to grow, I know that, the bigger you get, the more risk you have, the more you have to lose. So the more I wanted to get involved and learn about, how to do things the right way. And I always try and pass that knowledge off to everyone that I do business with, whether it's co-packing, whether it's selling oil, or whether it's selling my products to their stores or their distributors.
And it's not, to JD's point, it's not even necessarily understanding your risk exposure, but it's educating yourself.
Correct.
Right? And again, things like American Healthy, that's built into the core and the model of what JD has started. There's value in that beyond just when you write a check. But that's.
So do you think that there's, as you just mentioned, there's value in that beyond writing a check? Do you think being a member of, any given hemp association is gonna magnify your voice or give you, a bigger, more prominent seat at the table? Or, is it important to, as we were mentioning earlier, know who you're doing business with? Is something similar to be said about the national associations that are out there advocating for hemp?
Yeah, there's a lot that are masquerading like they're advocating for hemp.
What do you mean by that?
Well, are we name dropping while we're having this conversation? Because
We're live.
there's an organization that claims to be a trade association for cannabis and hemp, and they might as well just drop the H off of that. There's a lot of associations that I've seen, especially as being active on LinkedIn, people who claim to be hemp advocates. In the state of Maryland, we had a woman who ran for Congress who put in a bill that she championed it as this great hemp bill in Maryland, and it was not a good hemp bill. It was a milligram cap bill. It was a terrible bill, and she acted as if she was a hemp advocate, and she has an entire, she had and was one of the board members of the Maryland Hemp Coalition, which has since been dissolved and reopened with real hemp advocates. So you want to make sure if you're going to be part of an association, that association is led by real hemp advocates and not low-key big cannabis people. Because we come to find out that woman who put that bill in was a registered lobbyist for MaryMed, based out of MSO, based out of Mass. And then she ran for Congress and luckily lost. But these are things that are happening out there, so you definitely want to make sure. That's why I love American Healthy. These are real hemp people that are fighting every single day for you. So
Every single member, every board member has a hemp business. There's not a single person on the team besides our lobbyists that work for us that don't have hemp businesses. JD's got stores. I'm on the board of the National Association. I have a raw material company. JJ has a large company. I mean, we're all in this for hemp. So at risk of promoting why we're here, I don't know of another association that's actually, one, gets things done, is effective with their dollars, and actually supports hemp. I mean, every other association is look at their board, just look at their board. So, I mean, the American Healthy Board is JD, myself, and Nick Warner of Herb. So there's your board. Those are the people that make your decisions, and then our state chapters are ran by people like this on the stage. So at the end of the day, going back to pick your partners wisely, if you want to protect your business and you want to stay in tune with what's going on, you join this place right here. I think that's the simplest way to put it. We're highly effective. Maryland president sued the state, won. Florida's still work in process, but that seems good. Tennessee, we've regulated. Alabama, Kentucky, North Carolina's meeting on our bill right now, I think. So we're trying to do everything we can to protect the industry on the state and the federal side. What we need is more help. So at the end of the day, that's what we need is more people to be engaged.
And I was talking to JD about this before we jumped into the seminar, and I was like, JD, when did we start with CHAMPS doing this outreach and this initiative? And I was like, and it was after the MJ BizCon. It was late December in 2022, and fast forward, look at what we've done through that, and fighting through an upcoming farm bill, fighting through the most recent legislative pushback against our industry. And it's quite remarkable what American Healthy has been able to do with its resources, with its members, with the industry that sits by and supports us relative to what we face on the other side.
I mean, at the risk of sounding like we're beating a drum, American Healthy, in my view, is the only hemp association that's really getting wins, back-to-back wins across the board. And there's also a standard bearer, I think, of American Healthy, where when you're networking with members of the association, you're working with people who are doing things the right way. As somebody who's a retailer who came in, and I was able to be mentored by people who had all the answers to all of the regulatory compliance questions, and it helped me to scale my business, to improve the reputation of my business, for doing and being known for doing things the right way because of being connected to these types of people. So especially if you're just getting started, this is a great club to be a part of, I promise.
So it's interesting because, you mentioned wins, you mentioned getting answers as far as it relates to regulatory compliance, you mentioned being effective with the dollars that go to the association. What does that all translate to from a regulatory compliance perspective? I mean, how does, an association such as American Healthy, help shape regulations? Or, what does that look like from an involvement perspective? Or, what have you all seen as it relates to, these wins or, any sort of policy changes or laws that, may affect regulatory compliance on a state level or even on a federal level?
Definitely the educational aspect, 100%. But from a scientific standpoint, where I sit in the industry as an analytical chemistry lab, but also from the retail side and the in between, the bulk ingredient suppliers and manufacturers.
I think, our story needs to be heard, and that's the most important thing, whether that looks like lobbying or lawsuits or, lawsuits being the worst case scenario, but, you have to get your foot in the door some way. American Healthy has probably 40, 50 lobbyists across the country. Those doors now multiply whenever we need to get something done. And, at the end of the day, it's educating and making sure that our position's heard. Just like Illinois, the whole state, we'll talk more about that in Illinois, though, the whole state banded together, and against 50 lobbyists, we had 3, and the whole state banded together at the hemp industry, and they were able to kill the bill.
And cohesive messaging.
Cohesive messaging, and that's the things that need to happen across the country, not just in big markets like Florida and Georgia, and, we lost Wyoming and South Dakota this year. Like, although not big markets for a lot of us in here, like, we want to be covered everywhere we go, right? So, the biggest thing is turning dollars into, opening dollars, open doors, and doors help you educate and tell, the story of the $28 million industry that came out of 6 years essentially. So, and there's families and there's money on the line, and we have to protect our right to sell, hemp derived cannabis. That's it at the end of the day.
I think the more wins that we have, or the more active that we are, the more conversations we get involved in, the more we are viewed by legislators and lawmakers and regulators as a resource to go to where they can actually hear from the industry, and not just from the industry, but from the people who are advocating for doing things the right way. So my hope in Maryland is, even though we had to sue the state, that's kind of casualty of war. These are things that happen, right? Things go bad sometimes, but we're hoping we were very reasonable, and to be able to go back again this session and tell them, look, we have been the standard bearer for what hemp businesses should look like. And I think having an association like American Healthy, and as it continues to grow, and as you all get involved and get engaged, we will be viewed as the thought leaders in this space, and legislators will want to hear from us state to state.
Yeah, and to that point, unfortunately, they're afraid of what they don't know. And in the midst of that, the easiest solution for them is to shut it down.
Good
and
people make bad policy sometimes.
Most
and
of
that's
people,
where the education aspect comes in.
most of these people don't understand our issue because it is a new issue, and unfortunately, we really are at war with another industry, which is the regulated marijuana industry. And if we're not in those rooms preventatively, then they will be in those rooms, and that's the story they'll hear, and that's the only story they'll hear. So, losing a state like Iowa, why did we lose Iowa, or why did Iowa go to 4 milligrams? Well, it's probably because someone in the cannabis or the regulated marijuana industry told them to go to 4 milligrams. Like, that's how policy is made in a lot of scenarios. So if you're not there to educate people, the regulators and the politicians, then the other story will be told. So, we need to speak up as much as we can and make sure people understand that, you know, the hemp industry isn't to be governed by another competing industry. Like, that's just not acceptable. So we have to be in those rooms.
People need to see our faces and know that we're not the industry that poisons children.
Yep.
Right? Because that's really, that's the lie that's told, that's the big lie that's told in every state legislature, everywhere a bad hemp bill comes up, is this room is just full of a bunch of people who poison kids. And then, well, those are
And
the
that needs to
stories.
be demonstrated through responsible operators in this space, along the whole way, from the testing lab to a retailer to everyone on the stage here. And exhibiting that and demonstrating that in the face of a regulator is what we're doing, and that's the important aspect. They don't, you know, sometimes they don't realize there's actual people that are trying to do things in the right way for the right reason.
The majority of the industry is, and we need the people that aren't, we need to shove them out. Or they need to correct.
And I think that's what this association is doing, it's raising awareness, you know, and I can tell you a story. I had Hillary Cassell in Florida come to my facility, and she was shocked. She's like, I thought that this was just a small little operation, and this is, you know, the hemp business was a bunch of pirates, basically. She's like, you have like real chemists and executives and, you know, board of directors, and she's like, wow, you know, and you know, that's what Florida Healthy and American Healthy is able to do, is bring that awareness and education to our legislators that are helping write the policies, right? I remember even when we did the economic impact report, they didn't believe us.
Yeah.
They
Still get my
it's, you know, this is a big industry, and it takes coming together and the grassroots support and everything that we're doing in order to protect our businesses, right?
So it doesn't seem as if regulatory compliance is just a series of checking boxes. You know, making sure your packaging is correct, your labeling, making sure your products are appropriately tested, you know, only being sold to people under the age of 21. It sounds almost as if, you know, true regulatory compliance is not just a function of, you know, playing by the rules, but also helping inform those rules, you know, be a part of that legislative process, you know, whether it be Rep. Cassell in Florida, you know, whether it be the people that you've been speaking with in Maryland, Nick, you know, people that Chris and Brett have spoken with on the Hill in Washington, D.C. So it doesn't sound like it's just a series of complying with state regulations, but it's informing that policy through active education. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, no matter where you are in the country, you know, obviously blue-leaning states will be more marijuana focused as they have regulated programs, but at the end of the day, these people, you know, the regulators and politicians aren't bad people, they just need to understand the issue. Again, if you're not there, or if you don't back an association that's gonna be in that room, and people that understand how to talk to these people, then you will get screwed. I mean, that's it. If you stick your head in the sand, you will get screwed.
That's why we're really glad to see this room full.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all for coming.
I think we've got time for just, you know, one or two more questions. Go ahead.
I think I'm a room full of a lot of retailers.
You got it.
I'd like to ask. Seeing as how we have.
It's on.
Mic check.
Yeah.
Seeing as how we have a room full of retailers right now, aside from not carrying products that are clearly illegitimate or marketing to kids, because we know that's the #1 thing they keep coming to us with, I see a need for retailers to put up QR codes, encouraging customers to sign up at the point of sale. They're bored, they're waiting for checkout. Utilize that space. I saw some smoke and vape shops in Illinois. Applaud to the people already doing that. But in talking with JB, getting those customer signups and getting activism on being able to text them on the days it matters, which I want to help fund. And I want to acknowledge this group as an industry business as well, that I've done my homework. These guys are at the forefront. Support them. They're showing up, putting sweat equity in when we can't, and that's really critical to our industry. But what else would you guys suggest, or key things people as retailers could be doing to help support these efforts?
First and foremost, thank you for the compliment. And I think Nick would probably be best suited to start this as a retailer himself.
Sure. So, you know, it's funny. Maryland went bad, and I lost 3 of my retail stores behind like really bad policy, and it was really because the truth is the smoke shop side was not getting engaged. Just like Brett, I think it was Brett or Chris was just talking about having your head in the sand. There's a lot of people at this event, I think, with their head in the sand and just walk past the table thinking everything is all good, man. Like, if people don't get engaged, CHAMPS won't even be here potentially, because this is a huge industry that requires, to answer your question, we need your voice, right? We need everybody to show up when it's time for example, if the lobbyists that are working with the organization are able to put together a good common sense regulatory bill, you need a lot of people to show up to support that bill. So throw the I'm competing with the guy down the street conversation out the window. Make friends with the other smoke shops, the other CBD stores, the other retailers, and get them all to show up and support what we're doing. Obviously have them join the association, do roundup programs in your stores to raise money. If you're $2.50, would you like to round up to $3? And take that money and act as a pass-through and a go-between for donations to the association. The most important thing is we need voices and we need faces and we need stories, right? Like, I don't know you, I'm sure we can get to know each other at some point, but you seem like a really well put together person. You don't look like you're out there poisoning kids, and a legislator needs to see that you're just a regular person building a business and trying to do things the right way. So showing up is the most important thing. A lot of people are scared. Especially when they're selling THCA flower and they're selling, if you have a guilty conscience and you're afraid, it's probably because you got something on your shelf that shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, you shouldn't be in a situation where you feel that way. And then we need to get all the people who are doing things the right way. And we need cohesion.
And demonstrate to your, obviously, we're all here because the customer, the consumer has driven us to where we're at.
That's right.
But driving that through your consumer, yes.
I have two asks that everyone wants to help, right? I say, money or your time. It's one or the other. If you don't have money to give the association your time, and time can look like, for example, shameless plug, we try to do news updates every Thursday at NCN, forward that email to 100 stores, right? The stores don't know what's going on, and the distros really stepped up in Illinois and in Georgia recently, and they're super, we really got to engage our distros as much as we can because they really have control over the stores and the products that go into them. But all the help we can get, whether it's creative help, if we could get ahead of things, and we talk about this all the time, on our association calls, is we need to we can't be reactive. If we're reactive all the time, one, it's going to cost everybody more money, and two, we can lose.
Yep.
So if we start putting preventative medicine in, which is, for example, a QR code in every store in, let's pick some random state, South Carolina, right? South Carolina's out of session, we're actually in a pretty good spot there, but it doesn't matter if we're in a good spot or bad spot. Someone could come in with a bunch of money and give a bunch of money to a Senate president, and if then we're on our back feet again. So the best thing to do is as the association grows, we're able to do more of this stuff. So, the dollars are important, but it's education to everyone else about what we're doing. Because it's not a problem until it is. I've been fundraising, and JJ's been helping me fundraise as much as we can, but the association really only gets dollars whenever there's crisis. That's the reality of the situation. So, we have to get ahead as an industry and say, listen, I don't want a crisis. I want to get ahead of a crisis. In the fall in Illinois, we'll be up against another battle. So let's get ahead of that. Let's protect Illinois. Let's get regulation through, which is the association's job. And let's get preventative so that we don't have to, be here, right?
And throughout the vertical of the hemp industry, that is where I think the one gap is. It's like everyone all the way, and then there's a gap down to the retailer. They don't even know that they need testing or need to get a product registered, or even where it comes from sometimes.
The reality is that if every retailer gets paid $50 a month, the association would have everything it needs. It's as simple as that.
All right, well, I know that there's probably a lot of.
This is like church. We're gonna walk down the aisle now.
It's not quite getting to pass in the collection basket, but I think that's all the time we have for right now. I know everybody that's up on the stage would be more than happy to answer any other questions that are out there in the audience. Anything we can do to be a resource. Please do not hesitate to pull any one of us aside. We're more than happy to give you our time and our expertise or insight wherever it may be applicable. So thank you all for being here for this. Really, really appreciate it. Hope you learned something. If you didn't, at least you got to sit in a room with some other lovely people. So thanks everyone for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks everybody.
you're good. Cool. Thank you, man. I'm not coming over yet. Not yet. Huh. Well, it's easy to do when there's what you can't see. You sticking on or no?
Yeah.
Well, you scared you're sitting back? You can move it for me? No. Thank you. I manage it. Appreciate that. Yeah. Here. I got this. It's gonna. Here. It's all good. I appreciate
I wouldn't leave just yet.
You're streaming this live. How do I find the live stream? Okay. Oh my gosh, I wonder I couldn't see. Let me see it. This is Christina. Doing okay. Can you keep you guys alive? Something, Mark.
Are these things on?
Check, check.
Mic check. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we just went through a really hard fight in the state of Illinois, and I know that you just heard from our regulatory compliance panel. But this panel has been put together to showcase some of the best advocates from around the United States with a variety of experience from Maryland, Florida, Colorado, North Carolina, and one of our largest, we got to give this guy a round of applause, one of our largest donors and largest members, of course. We wanted to try and illustrate to you all the importance of what it is that advocacy does and how it works and why it works. So we are honored to have Representative LaShawn Ford from the Illinois State House of Representatives. And we want him to say a word.
Thank you very much. Hope everybody's doing well. Today, I was just telling them that the older I get, things change. So I can't see with my glasses, and I can't see without them. So I can't see you out there now, but I can see what I have right before me. So I don't know what anybody, I might be the oldest person in the room. I don't know what's happening in life. But it's good to get older. As you know, I'm state representative of the 8th district, and that's the west side of Chicago, the Austin community, and Oak Park, Berwyn, the Grange Park, North Riverside, Western Springs, and Brookfield, just a lot of different western suburbs. I've been doing it for 17 years, and this has been the most, I mean, there's a lot of fights as a black legislator. You can imagine civil rights and trying to make sure that there's equal justice under the law, and people not understanding what that means. And so this has been a new fight for me with the cannabis and the hemp delta business. So one of the goals is to be fair. I mean, when you talk about being fair is not eliminating people in the process. And so, as you know, I've been fighting with you all and on your behalf, working to regulate Delta 8 in Illinois and the hemp products for a number of years now. And trust me, it hasn't been easy at all. I was telling the guys before the panel that the hemp Delta industry is like the 99% of the society, and the cannabis is the 1%. You know, 99% people power. Cannabis, 1%, all the money. And all the money really impacts how public policy is actually made. And so when you have people that actually support the fight, we should be very, very grateful, because without resources, the fight is dead. It's really dead. So the more resources we have, the more people we could get out there and really fight the 1%, and that's the cannabis industry, because this industry is not out to eliminate. They just want to exist, and that's what I know. And I look around the room, of course, and I see this room being more diverse than the cannabis industry, and that's important. And so, in case I do see my brothers over there, you guys got businesses, you know, that's great. I see you guys, I see the women in here. Women, I mean, you are in the same position when you think about the cannabis industry, and it's only a few people that's really dominating the industry. And I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable here, but it's white men. And so this industry is not like that. So thank you very much, and it makes my fight easier to stand with you. So it took me some time to even understand this industry. I don't know, I can't tell you I still totally understand the chemistry of it, because I did not do well in chemistry. And so I still don't understand the process of it, but what I do understand is that it can be regulated for everyone to understand the safety. And that's my goal, to make sure that we are able to be proactive and not reactive to this process. So events like this is critical for strategies, for people coming together. This is like a retreat. After a retreat, everybody comes out stronger and more united, and I hope that this is an example for you all to become stronger and united. I hope everyone here is on board with regulating, making sure that individuals that's not 21 are not able to purchase. I hope everyone here understand that, you know, it's my goal to work with you to make sure that there are limits to the amount of milligrams that per serving. I think we all agree that we want to be good actors and we want Illinois to be a leader in the space. So I'm here to listen, learn, and answer any questions, but definitely it's important that we stick together. And after today, after the event, hopefully you all grow the army of people to teach. More than anything, the legislators in Springfield and the municipalities across the state must understand that this product is not the product that's killing babies. Please educate my colleagues about the product. And I think most recently, even the governor made a comment about the product not being used for people with health conditions. Even our governor needs to be educated about the fact that people do use Delta hemp products for their health. And so, thank you very much, and I hope that you understand that the fight is real, and don't let up if you want to shut us down, or shut you down. I don't have an interest. So thank you very much.
All right, panel over. All right, I'm Nick. I'm going to be your moderator for this particular panel. This panel is going to be focusing on proactive versus reactive lobbying strategies. And the whole goal and purpose of this, I hope, is for the room to understand, number one, the importance, and I think Representative Ford just spoke to it in a major way, how important it is for stakeholder engagement with your legislators to educate them. The goal with this panel is for you all to understand the process of lobbying, how it all works, who your advocates are, and how you can get involved in kind of a whole 30,000 foot view of the lobbying experience. So I have some prepared questions for our panelists. First, I'd like to just, if I can, just go back to Representative Ford. I want to know if you could just kind of sum up for the group how important it is that there is stakeholder engagement in the formulation and implementation of the hemp policies in Illinois, and there's 2,800, I did some research, right? There's 2,800 industry and trade associations in the state of Illinois. And so how do you as a legislator know how to decide, because I would imagine there's competing industries, competing trade organizations. How do you as a legislator, and what are you looking for from a trade association and from the stakeholders to help you make informed decisions on policies relating to this industry?
Well, you know, let me also thank you for, while doing our work, I ran across this guy and I used it in Illinois, the injunction that was put on in Maryland. I'm like, you guys want to monopolize, cannabis wants to monopolize this, but did you guys see Maryland? And look, I get to sit with him today. I've been talking about him for the last month. And so I think it's all about economics. If you want to make sure that you connect with politicians, one, you have to educate them about the truth about it. And two, you have to educate them about killing an industry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so the question is, in Illinois, is it our plan to kill an industry, kill jobs, kill businesses, and kill the revenue that's coming from the industry, and then find other ways to tax citizens, like regressive tax? That doesn't make sense. So we have an industry that want to participate in a regulated form of business. They want to pay taxes. They want to be taxed. They want to be regulated. We have to make sure that they understand that killing an industry will hurt Illinois' economy. It's all about economics, and if we can stick to that, that's going to be very, very helpful when they know how much money will be lost in Illinois as a result of trying to eliminate an entire industry.
So what are the biggest hurdles and obstacles that you're running into as a champion for our industry? What are the opposing viewpoints? What are you hearing? And how can this room better help to educate your colleagues to offset some of that negative talk?
Yeah, I think one, every legislator, I think this industry is wide and large and it's touching every district. So one, everyone should know their legislator and know where their business is, or friends that have businesses in state reps and senators districts. You gotta reach them and let them know that we are here and we have good businesses that generate revenue for the state. We hire people, and you have to educate them about the product. What people see in Springfield, for the most part, is an industry that kills babies. Because that's exactly the narrative that's been given out there. I can tell you, even those individuals that are with cannabis, they're gonna be with cannabis regardless, even if you educate them about the reality of this industry. And that's still a minority. The majority of the individuals in Springfield want to learn, and they want the industry to exist, but it's going to be up to us to make sure that they are able to fight back when people say things like, this product is killing babies. So educating members is key, and it takes resources to be able to get to every member to push back, because while you're pushing with your narrative, the industry that wants to monopolize it has their narrative. And so how do you continue to push the proper narrative is constantly be in the face and have one message so that it can't be confused. You know their message, you need to know your message, and I think that's why it's called being proactive and not reactive. We have to frame this industry and make sure that everyone knows that this is an industry that should exist, is good for Illinois. And I would say the one message that seems obvious is cannabis once was illegal in Illinois, still federally illegal. So what's good for cannabis should be good for Delta. But they say, no, we don't want what's good for cannabis to be good for Delta. Why can't we make sure that the same argument that they made to legalize cannabis be the same argument that we use to legalize Delta in Illinois? It was, let's eliminate the war on drugs. We don't want to keep locking people up for something like this. We need to make sure people know exactly what they're getting. We want to clean it up. We want to make sure that we regulate it, tax it, test it. That's what they said. And so that's our message too. We want to do the same thing that you did. And I believe both industries can exist at the same time. Be aware that there are people that just will not understand or want to understand because they're going to be with cannabis. They're going to be with cannabis, and to cannabis say, it's okay, we want to get in that business too. Then those members will say, it's okay, we're okay with it now because the people that we support say it's okay.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. I mean, if that doesn't show you the reality of what goes on inside of the state legislators, where there's loyalties and there's a game being played very often. So with that, Shiki, I'd like to ask you, how does, especially with a company your size and the amount of advocacy work that your company does, how does your role in being involved in advocacy help you to forecast the future of your business?
So when I look at, this is a question, I speak with JD about, and many of the other brand owners, my vendors, our employees, attorneys, we speak about this a lot, right? a lot of people call me, every week, and they ask me to predict the future. And while I'm very touched that people call me and they think my opinion is valid or worthwhile, unfortunately, I am not able to predict the future. What I am able to do, right, is control my actions, right, and control my message, right? So, I look in this room, I see a lot of leaders, a lot of people sacrificing their time. You guys be out there eating lunch, you be out there making money, you be out there doing something else besides being here, and your presence and your participation is greatly appreciated. What I do know is if we fight really hard, if we do not break our word, right? If we continue to maintain our responsibility through compassionate care in a responsible manner, in the future, I'll be honest, we will make more money. That's right. We will make more money. We'll do it safely. We'll do it with government sponsorship. We'll be able to give back more into our communities. And I'll see a lot more smiling faces in this crowd, in the future. I look at some men and women out there in the crowd that I have the pleasure of working with a lot, and they are fighting hard, not only with their wallets, but with their voices and their employee resources, their time. And I'm telling you, just in the last month, we have taken significant strides forward. You look, we're able to get individuals of very high caliber to come sit with us today after all the hard work this gentleman has put in to help us as a community. He has no financial interest in what we're doing, right? He's interested in doing the right thing for the people of his community, and he feels that what we are doing is warranted. So if an individual of this caliber is willing to do that, then we, who have a tremendous financial interest in this business, have to do the same.
That's right. Yep. So with that in mind, how important is it, and let me rephrase it, how do your distros and your retailers and your colleagues view you as the example for this proactive engagement that you're taking? Do you think that as somebody being involved like that, it's only helped you to do more business because people see you being involved, your distros want to follow you, the retailers want to follow you, the other brands that want to make the type of money Torch is making want to follow you? Would you say that that's helped you?
Well, 100%, because, I've noticed that there's some amazing actors in the distribution side of this business, right? And when we've had state level battles, and I've gone with JD and people like Ernie Ciascio and out into the field, and these distributors that really, really want to be good actors, that want to be partners to the community and to their government, right? And they see that we're not investing financially, because anyone can write a check, right? But we're actively participating in pushing this forward. They try their best to support us. And it means a lot, 100%. I see retailers and distributors doing the right things to help keep our business alive. And sure, we're willing to get very creative to reciprocate that for them. And, I can't say anything more than I'm super, super grateful for people regarding our actions in lobbying and protecting industry as positive ones.
Yeah, it's awesome. So JD, I want to ask you something. When we get to talking about, some of these states that problems kind of just pop up out of nowhere and we're forced to get on our defensive foot, the purpose of the panel is to talk about proactive lobbying, and we know, and Representative Ford touched on it already, also how active the marijuana lobby is, and it's already occupied territory by the time we show up in most cases. Can you give an example of ways that proactive lobbying has worked out in our favor, and then conversely, how reactive lobbying works out, and just kind of the difference between the two and how they play out?
So I'll point out your research, where you found 2,800 associations just in the state of Illinois.
Right.
Every industry has representatives, whether it be lobbyists or the executive director of an association of a nonprofit, that advocate on their behalf. Our industry really stood up post-COVID. 2018, 2019, right, the farms were trying to get it right, massive overproduction of the actual biomass and some of the raw materials. Everyone went through the COVID blip. The last 2.5, 3 years have been the hardest legislative fights we've ever gone through, because realistically, we've only been around 5.5 years. And so I think proactive lobbying, one good example was the state of Tennessee. I don't know if many of you in this room, I see some of you that have worked with, that have national brands that ship to states all over the country. Many folks regard the Tennessee bill as the best piece of legislation for hemp in the United States currently. That was a 2.5-year fight. We were active every day, negotiating, working with legislators to get something passed in a state that did not have legal cannabis, right, as our opposition. And so our proactive approach in Tennessee helped us pass a piece of legislation that, in my opinion, honestly represents the cannabis industry and what it should look like. Diverse. Anybody can get a license in the state of Tennessee to retail, manufacture, and sell these products. That is what cannabis should be. And when we're proactive, we see that our enemies, they have to play catch up, just like sometimes we have to play catch up, right? And so a good example of that would be the state of Illinois. You know, Illinois passed the first recreational cannabis bill in the country that had social equity tied to it. And so there's an amazing example of the intent of the legislature to involve as many people as humanly possible in their recreational program. But as we all know, the licensure process has been a nightmare. Many people have sacrificed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars as small business owners, and still cannot be successful against some of these large hedge funds or venture capital firm-backed giant companies. So in Illinois, some of the kind of reactive approach from the hemp industry, trying to go to the legislature and beg and plead with them to work through the issues that our industry may have and regulate it in a common sense way, has actually been really difficult. We've seen similar things in Ohio. Ohio, we've been rather reactionary because for 2.5 years, we felt there was no issue. The legislature and the legislators that we spoke to were on our side. And now all of a sudden, you've got the governor who's come out and had several press conferences saying they want to regulate these products, and some of the legislation we've seen, it's an all-out ban. You know, Rep. Ford, I think you phrased this perfectly. Yeah, it regulates you. It regulates you right out of business. And so being reactionary, at least in our industry, has almost become a necessity because we don't have enough resources to go into all 50 states all at once. And although our industry may operate in all 50 states, we're so new, many of the retailers, distributors, these are all brand new businesses. They maybe have just become profitable in the last couple of years. They don't know how to organize. They've never been a member of an association. Maybe they're a member of their local Rotary Club or whatever, but it almost is reactionary out of necessity because of the age of our industry and where we're at in the timeline of the legalization of cannabis, right? And so in some states where we're proactive, we're very successful. In some states where we're reactive, although we can influence the conversation, we're already behind the 8 ball. So the more proactive we are moving forward, literally from this day forward, the more proactive we are, the better off we all are. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And just to piggyback off of that, you know, Maryland had a very similar situation to Illinois in terms of the social equity being built into the cannabis licensing and the decimation of the hemp industry under the guise of common sense regulation. It didn't go the way we wanted it to, but the court seemed to think otherwise. And you know, luckily, Maryland is back to work. Can you, so let me ask you this, how does American Healthy prepare for and respond to sudden policy shifts? So just to give, you know, we're gonna have a whole farm bill discussion on the next panel, so we don't have to necessarily go there, but just, I guess it's another opportunity really to pick up the association, but how do you respond when things all of a sudden just come out of nowhere? I think Philip, you can speak to this as well.
Well, it's actually a perfect point. So Philip Snow is our legislative affairs director. He is the closest thing to a clone that I have. I know if something pops up in one state, and let's say I'm in the state of Georgia, and I'm working with legislators, I'm in meetings with senators, and something pops up in another state, thank God we have the resource that is Philip Snow to be able to send him into that state, and we can trust him as a representative of our group, right? And so the more resources we have at our disposal, the more people. I mean, Philip Snow is one of, I have to say this, Philip, one of the most famous and one of the best cannabis attorneys in the United States, full stop. The fact that he is sitting here working with us and helping us move this conversation forward, this man helped write the recreational initiative in Colorado. This is one of the most powerful attorneys and smartest people I've ever met, and I'm proud to call him a friend, but he is a resource. He represents a dollar amount. We have to fly him out. We have to buy the plane tickets, the hotels. These are all things that take proactive fundraising. And so, Philip, I'd love to hear your perspective on what it's like to engage when things pop up all of a sudden.
Thank you for the kind words. That was certainly undeserved. You know, it's interesting because there's a lot that I can say to that. But you know, I left my house yesterday in Denver, and I was on my way to the airport. I was probably 20 minutes away from my house when our North Carolina lobbyist called me and said, "Hey, there's something going on with our bill in North Carolina. It turns out they didn't change this, aspect of it, or this piece of language, whatever the case is. It's going to be up for discussion tomorrow on the Senate Judiciary Committee. I can't come to Chicago." She was supposed to be on this panel right now as a state lobbyist and talk about her ability to, get to representatives and to have those meaningful conversations and things like that. And she called me yesterday and said, "This is going on." And I said, "Cool, you're staying in Raleigh. Don't worry about Chicago." And she said, "Did you bring a suit?" I said, "I did." And she said, "Cool, you need to come to Raleigh all week next week because we're going to be in the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, we're going to be in the Senate Rules Committee on Wednesday, and we're going to be on the floor of the Senate on Thursday of next week." And this is about a piece of legislation that I have worked on for probably the last 14 months. JD and I have worked on this in what I would consider to be, model legislation for the regulation of hemp-derived cannabinoid products across the country, and things happen that quickly. And so instead of, flying back to Denver, I'm now flying to Raleigh and gonna get really familiar with that part of the state. But that's how quickly things can change. And to discuss how different things can appear, overnight. We have been recently, a number of members of the American Healthcare Alternatives Association have joined what is referred to as the Republican Attorney Generals Association. Now think of this as like a country club for Republican Attorney Generals. And we had the opportunity to give them a presentation at one of their events recently. And it was myself, another cannabis attorney by the name of Justin Swanson, and Chris Ware, who was just speaking up here. And we talked to a room of 27 attorney generals from all over the country for 15 minutes. And we gave a presentation about how hemp wants to be regulated, the value of understanding and educating these, about these products. And we finished, and the Attorney General, General Hilders from Nebraska, got up and said, "Listen here, these guys up there are lying to you. A 5 milligram product that they want to sell could kill my kid." And that's the room that you walk into sometime. And it makes it very, very difficult because those conversations can shift very, very quickly. On the heels of that, we find out that the large marijuana industry has been donating to the Democratic Attorney Generals Association for the last 10 years. So it's not that very hard to understand why it goes around 20 to 23 attorney generals sent a letter to Congress at the tail end of March saying, "Let's close the loophole." I wonder where that all came from, right? So it's a function of things changing very, very quickly. It's a function of people that have money, as Representative Ford was so kind to say, people who have a lot of money can influence policy, or quite frankly, the lack of a cohesive industry. And if we don't all work together, we're not all going to be singing from the same sheet of music, whether it be here in Illinois, whether it be in Raleigh, North Carolina, whether it be on the Hill in Washington, D.C. So being able to pivot, being able to mobilize, and being able to work together
is the primary reason that we are all still in business. The 2018 Farm Bill gave everybody a wonderful window of opportunity, and absent people mobilizing and coming together, the 2024 Farm Bill, we might end up with the goalposts being moved on us in the middle of the game. We might end up with the rug being pulled out from underneath this industry, or we might end up with them kicking the can down the road for another year. But all of that is a long-winded way of saying, being able to rapidly pivot, being able to rapidly engage with the legislative process in order to exert what influence we have is absolutely critical. And that's why working with associations like American Healthy Alternatives, is vital. Because American Healthy engages with lobbyists on the state level, on the federal level, lobbyists that can get you into conversations with Representative Ford, lobbyists that can get you into conversations with senators and representatives on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where you can tell your story. It's very, very difficult to just walk into someone's office and say, I'm Joe Schmo, I have a hemp business in Springfield, I need to talk to Rep. Ford. Well, he's a busy guy. And, quite frankly, lobbyists help open those doors. So the value of having lobbyists that can influence the legislative process, but more importantly, get you into those meetings, get you into those conversations, that's your megaphone. And, that isn't inexpensive. So I would say proactive versus reactive. Usually if we're on our back foot, we've already lost. Typically, as my friend and colleague JD likes to say, if we're fighting a PR battle, we've already lost. We don't want to be in that spot. So I think that's why having a proactive strategy, making sure that you are involved in this process, whether it be with your local representatives or your local senators or even the ones on Capitol Hill in DC. I mean, that's where this happens. This isn't just time to keep your head in the sand and say, hey, we can keep making money. We don't need to do anything about child-resistant packaging. We just need to kind of keep moving down the road. I mean, that's, as one of my lobbyists in Colorado likes to say, you're either driving the bus or you're getting run over by it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. It's kind of funny and both funny and convenient, that timing with that letter going, with the AGs going to Congress and asking them to close the loophole. I always find it funny when cannabis companies echo prohibition era, talking points, they just sound like the prohibitionists very often. I think it's kind of frustrating. So you talked about mobilizing people quickly. So what strategies as an association, I think everyone probably can speak to this, do you use to mobilize people quickly and get people to show up and get people to rally? And so what strategies have you implemented successfully in some of these states to get a W on this side of the column?
I think honestly, working collaboratively amongst competitors, that's been my superpower, is getting many competitors who may do the exact same thing on a phone call and get them in the same room and using their brain power. There are very creative individuals in this industry who have navigated using artificial intelligence, using cutting edge technology to develop messaging, to get it out into the social media world, to get it out into some of the biggest platforms in the world. Using our resources collectively, you might know a guy, well, what's that theory, 6 degrees of separation? Mm-hmm. You might know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows the President of the United States. You might know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows Joe Rogan, right? And so as we engage in a state, rallying the troops, sometimes it's as simple as getting 3 or 4 or 5 people on a phone call and saying, hey, we got to get this message out to as many businesses as possible. And someone will pop up with an idea and say, hey, I've got this distributor, I've got this person, they've got a giant mailing list, we're going to push this message out to 10,000 retailers in 5 minutes flat. And I've seen that happen. One example, the state of Georgia, we put together a QR code, a flow code, that generated over 130,000 emails to elected officials over the course of 3 weeks. Wow. So,
let me tell you, the fight is still live. I just got a text from Mark back there that was up fighting all night while they were trying to ban it. So Cap Facts, how many people ever read Capital Facts? It's a publication in Springfield. Just now, it just came out. It says, today, on Cap Facts right now, state lawmakers left Springfield last week without getting a plan to ban Delta 8 products across the finish line. A bipartisan group of lawmakers and Governor Pritzker are concerned about the potential of more children and adults getting sick from the unregulated synthetic THC products over the summer. And so that's the narrative, that they want to ban it. It's very important that you tell the truth about this product, because they want to ban it, and you think that's the quickest way to monopolize the industry of cannabis.
Wow.
Just now, they just posted it.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm so sick of the, we're poisoning people thing. I mean, there's some hands, I don't know, if now's the time to take questions.
Sure, yeah. Please open it up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Stacy McCaskill, and I'm the founder of Hemp Farms. We're a seed to label hemp farm here in Illinois, out in Woodstock. Everybody in this room should be thanking the Illinois Hemp Growers Association and the 4 family farms that showed up on Capitol Hill on Monday. When we arrived, every lobbyist told us that that fight was over, that that bill was going to come to the floor. If it had come to the floor, it would have passed if it had come to the floor. Then it would have gone to the Pritzker's desk, would have been signed into law for a fact. Pritzker is totally with the big marijuana. What I wanted to share about that is all the up and down the street retailers and distribution of Delta 8 need folks like me on your side. You guys need to start looking for local produced products, even if they're more expensive and beyond your price point, just to let them sit and dust on your shelves, just so you can show that you're supporting local farms. Because I'm telling you right now, it was there were about 4 family farms that showed up on Monday, and the Illinois Hemp Growers Association and these lobbyists, these guys that have invested a lot of money. And I'm telling you, the lobbyists have been working on it for months, years. And I'm so grateful to the money and your organization and your strategy and all of that. But what killed it was family farms. Showing up, me telling my story, this is gonna shut my farm down. I won't be able to sell my #1 best-selling product, joint and muscle topical salve made from full spectrum CBD. I mean, how benign is that? For example, and I just think these are important comments, if you'll just let me go for a couple more minutes. I went in to talk to Representative Blair Sherlock. She was a co-signer of that bill. Had no idea. It took 5 minutes explaining to her the industry and what Delta 8 was, that it was a natural cannabinoid, and to explain that to her and the devastating impact it was going to have on retail, property values, et cetera, et cetera. She was like, geez, I had no idea. We got 7, running around the Capitol that morning, we got 7 co-sponsors to drop their co-sponsorship. That is unheard of. So, I want to say that. Now, the other thing I just want to mention about that is, it's difficult for us to keep going in front of our customers to tell them the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. That's why family farms like mine have been kind of resistant to join the, let's pro-legislation, let's write that kind of thing. I think it's a 2-pronged approach. We can be balanced. I think we can collaborate, and I think you guys absolutely need our stories to make this happen. I think we can work together on that. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. Every single freaking Republican voted yes to send that to the House, and they did because leadership told them that Dems will run ads against them, that they're hurting children. That's the only reason they pushed it through. Your representative is the more powerful person. It's the House where things get mucked up. You need to know your representative. They need to be in your shop, your farm, your store, your processing center. However you're involved in this, you need your local representative in your shop. Mine's been at my farm at least 5 times, and he was a champion that day when I went up to there. In fact, he said, if it comes to the floor, even though he knew it would be dead, Steve Wright, he told me, he said, text me your top 4 talking points and I will talk them from the floor on behalf of you because you're in my district. And that was potency, purity, you know, the things that we're willing to do in our industry. The last thing I want to mention is, as it relates to big cannabis, I mean, you guys need to make the balance yourself about how much you want to get your customers involved in all of this. I think there's some fatigue that can happen there. And anybody that's been involved in social justice knows what I'm talking about. That fatigue can kind of set in. So you have to be somewhat careful about your selection. But I think we can create coalitions and educate the people who are benefiting, the economic beneficiaries of big cannabis, and tell them that their objectives, their economic objectives in associating with big cannabis can be much more quickly achieved and with bigger margins by associating with hemp. Okay, so first thing, like I met with the Cannabis Equity Coalition Association this past week at the marijuana conference last week. And when I walked up to their table, they had a big cannabis lobbyist card was on their table. And they're all about, you know, getting the social equity and making sure that they get the social equity out of the marijuana laws. Well, the fastest path to social equity is don't freaking stand in line and wait for big marijuana to give you a handout. Go get it yourself. Go start selling THCA flower. You don't need to have a dispensary to do that and benefit from this economy. Go get it. So let people know that. Let people in your communities know that they don't need a dispensary to go make money. Let's get after it. Now, the second thing is the path to normalcy, and this is my last comment. No, I'm done hijacking your excellent panel. Path to normalcy. There was a bunch of event planners putting on workshops last week at the cannabis conference, and they were talking about big marijuana sponsoring all these things and trying to figure out how to help consumption and also sell, like have table service, basically. Big marijuana can't do it, we can. Hemp can. We can get into restaurants, we can get into venues, that kind of thing. Let's collaborate with big marijuana and tell them, we'll pave the path to normalcy. You can't get table service yet? You need data, they need data. Nobody will insure this, there's no data. So those are my tips on how we could relate, and I'd like to hear your comments about, you know, any of those strategies, and you know, whether you think they'll work or not.
Well, thank you.
First of all, thank you for your passion. We do appreciate that, and you know, just by way of clarification, you don't happen to live in Mary Miller's district, do you?
I wish, no.
Do any of your
We do.
Do any of the members of your farmers coalition that live there?
Sure, yeah.
Love to talk to you after
Yeah,
the panel, so we can follow
Rachel
up.
Berry's been working that.
Wonderful, that's great. I think that you certainly make a few rather compelling points. I don't necessarily personally, you know, and having been on both sides of the fence, I don't necessarily know if I'm ready to, you know, reach across the proverbial aisle back towards marijuana, considering it's a fight that, you know, I've been fighting in courthouses and state houses and on the Hill in DC, you know, for the last 7 or 8 years. And I think that, you know, by and large, you know, in all the different states that I work in, they're trying to kill us. And so the last thing that I would really, and I certainly welcome any sort of ideas, but the last thing I would really want to do is collaborate with them and give them any sort of a leg up and or you know, build a bridge, because I think that, you know, quite frankly, with the liquid capital that they have on hand, the resources that they have on hand, you know, they certainly have a leg up on us already. And so I think that might be, you know, cutting out one of our existing legs just for the sake of standing next to them. But
what about collaborating with the people who benefit? I'm not talking about collaborating with big marijuana, I'm talking about collaborating with the people who benefit from big marijuana. to take their feet out from under them and say, hey, leave big marijuana, come over to us. We'll make you
I
money.
think they're so over-invested, they're over-leveraged in this over-regulated industry. So I think that's something that we're coming head-to-head with. So just to piggyback off of a couple of your points and give you some comments on the farmer story is super important, and what people tend to forget is farmers are more than the people who put the stuff in the ground. What matters to farmers is supply chain, right? If you don't have retailers to sell to and distros to sell to, the farmers don't eat. So it's not just about protecting the plant and the cultivation side of it. It's farmers need supply chain, so that's part of the conversation. Also, to speak to social equity in cannabis and the huge conversation around social equity in cannabis, hemp is social equity. We have 30% minimum minority participation in that, right? And that can be, that's as a whole. And that's because social equity naturally happens when you have low barriers to entry and when anybody is allowed to play, right? When you unleash the spirit of the American entrepreneur into a new industry like hemp, you will see natural social and economic equity taking place. So in Maryland, we had our bill, the bill that put the hemp industry out of business in Maryland, was the same bill that legalized recreational cannabis with a huge focus on social equity. So as JD says, when you in a PR battle, you already lost. So we lost. And then our PR strategy was, I made a movie called The Social Equity Illusion. And the entire film was focusing on the fact that you're not achieving social equity by locking people out and shutting down businesses, 30% minority.
I think we had a question from the gentleman in the back in the Dodgers hat.
We'll just leave it for the panel.
Sure. Very well done. Yeah, I'm not the right person to talk about this, but I do want to highlight Nick Patrick's personal story. Nick Patrick was an undocumented immigrant in the United States and just got his citizenship last year. But that, in my opinion, is what real social equity looks like. Again, I don't want to harp on this too much. I know we're running, past on time, but social equity, low barriers to entry, a playing field where everyone can participate is my dream, and I think it's many of yours' dreams. In the state of Florida, where I'm from, you have to have $50 million to participate in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
That is outrageous.
For sure.
They've locked up millions of people for over 100 years in the United States based on this prohibitionist law. And now they're trying to give it to a few individuals at the very top of our society. That is disgusting and what we should fight against.
I argued with the chair of the author of the bill, and I said, is your answer to tens of thousands of cannabis arrests 11 licenses in Baltimore City? 11 licenses? So you're going to guarantee the profitability of 11 people, this small segment, and even if all of those people were African American women, what about everybody else at the expense of broad-based economic participation? That's not what we're doing here. That's not cannabis equity. That's not what we're fighting for. That's protectionism, and it's masquerading as social equity. It's a hot button word and a term that's being thrown around way too much in this industry without any real force behind it. There's no real social equity in cannabis. Just look at the operators.
Let me tell you why you're so right. It not only is there no social equity, there's no equity.
Period.
I mean, it's funny because when I think about the way the economy is, you have people that actually vote against their best interests. Like poor people voting for people that will actually hurt them even more. Mm-hmm. And when you look at it, the cannabis industry is just like it. They fool people to believe that they got the answer when it's only a few people that's benefiting. So when we talk about black people not getting in or women not getting in, it's a whole lot more white people that's not getting in that need to be on the side of black people and women saying this ain't right. Because there are a lot of white people that put applications in to their cannabis owners and they got rejected. Only those people that really had a lot of money was able to really dominate. And that's unfortunate. So I repeat, even white people are getting left out. So we need to be in it together, my white brothers and sisters.
I think that's a great one to end on. We'll take a 5-minute remission and we'll get to our next panel. But thank you guys so much. And everyone, please give Reverend Sean Ford another hand.
Thanks, man.
Is the next panel going to be in this room as well?
Yes,
Oh,
5
okay.
minutes from now.
And it's the Farm Bill one?
It is.
Oh,
Last one.
cool, thanks.
You bet. Oh, okay. They're going to keep doing it. I mean, we just don't have good housing. It's a super small.
Love to see it.
That's the job.
It's just a super tight.
That's, I would
Please let us know how we can help. Very much appreciate it. Thank
How's it been? Come here, Stacy. Yeah, really, yeah.
Let me.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, yeah. I know. Okay, yeah. Yes.
That's also.
Right. They were like, what? You're like, what? Yeah, great. And that's amazing, and that shows you the power of constituents. The senators will tell you. I've had the senator on my farm 5 times, and he lives in my neighborhood. I see him at the grocery store all the time and everything, and I am so pissed at him. I'm like, I can't believe you all do this. You have no power. And that's when everybody automatically adjusts to it. It's She kept saying like every half an hour somebody dropped. Then somebody else would drop. And 45 minutes later somebody else would drop.
I got heat this done in like 3 minutes.
That was unheard of.
Hey everybody, whoa, that is loud. We're gonna start in about 120 seconds. So we'll be talking about the farm bill specifically.
I got it.
Do you mind? Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool.
I need to use the restroom.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
And now we're both.
We'd love to have you. No better time than ever.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you. We're going to jump straight to Q&A just because. Just flip that thing up whenever you want to.
Got it. Giving the guys that know what you're doing, it makes a big difference, for sure. We'd love to have you a part.
That's something we've been talking about doing as well. We have like 500-600 stores that we do that.
Sorry, guys, we're just waiting on one of our panelists. He on the last panel and he's using the restroom, so.
We're gonna talk first, I guess just to fill the void. We'll talk about the Mary Miller Amendment. That is why a lot of people are probably in the room, and then we'll probably just go straight to Q&A just because of the limited time. So that is our plan as of right now. So you guys start thinking of any questions you might have. That way you don't just hear us ramble for 30 minutes or however much time we have left. And if you don't have questions, I'll pick you out.
Certainly Southern Illinois, but I don't know her district. Here, wait, I'll Google it.
I know there's not a lot there. I know that. She won. She won by like 50% or something like that. 77%, I think, in her favor.
She represents Illinois' 15th district, which I believe is part of Southern Illinois.
Also, if you have a question, just flag me down. I got the mic.
I don't think she, from what I have heard, I don't think she has any risk of losing the election. But that's just from her federal team. So they dug into it. But, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Whip those votes. Ready, Senator?
Who are we talking about?
Farm bill.
Farm bill. Our favorite subject, if you couldn't tell.
All right, everybody, we'll get going. Nick, are there people outside? There's a few. You're gonna tell them that we're starting, they're welcome to join or not join.
Thank you for waiting.
I realized that in the first panel, I did not introduce myself, so my name is Brett Worley. I'm on the board of the American Healthy Alternatives Association. I'm also the CEO of MC Nutraceuticals. Josh, you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah, I'm Josh.
Not Leo, by the way, this is Josh.
Yeah, I took Leo's place. We look similar though, right? So I'm the president of the South Carolina Healthy Alternatives Association, the CEO of Turk Fusion, which is one of the larger private label contract manufacturing companies in the industry. So glad to be here. This is JD.
Yeah, JD McCormick, for those who don't know me, I'm the chairman of American Healthy Alternatives.
My name is Philip Snow. I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the American Healthy Alternatives Association. I am also the General Counsel for MC Nutraceuticals.
All right, everyone's here for the Farm Bill. Pressing question is what is Amendment 35? What happened? Why is it there? And what does it mean for the industry? I think Philip will probably kick that off, and then we'll have a brief discussion about it and go into Q&A.
Sorry, for those who are wondering, I pulled up the actual amendment so we can read it and reference it.
No, it's weird, I just got goosebumps. Anyway, so, Amendment 35 was an amendment, that was introduced during the Farm Bill markup by Mary Miller, who is a representative from a southern district within the state of Illinois. And her amendment, essentially, if, enacted into law, would all but destroy the United States hemp industry, most importantly for purposes of this convention, the cannabinoid industry. What that amendment does allow for are solely naturally occurring cannabinoids that are less than 0.3% THC. It does not allow you to take any naturally occurring cannabinoids out of the plant and convert them or manufacture them into anything else. Again, it puts a limit on the actual plant itself being greater than 0.3% THC, and I think for everybody in this room that pays attention to words as much as I do, there's nothing in front of that word THC, or excuse me, that acronym THC. Most of us are very, very comfortable operating within the space of Delta 9 THC. Most people shy away from the idea of total THC, things like that. So, Mary Miller's amendment is kind of a doomsday scenario, right? What happened with it through procedural posturing was the amendment was rolled into a block of other amendments, by and large, all of which were Republican, with the exception of one Democratic amendment. All of those amendments were essentially put into a package, and they were voted on by members of the House Ag Committee during the Farm Bill markup on May the 24th. That vote was taken orally. It wasn't something that people really pushed the red or a green button for. And the only Democratic amendment that was included in that was to provide farmers across the country with better access to cell phone communication. So essentially it was I'm gonna let all my Republican friends in, we're gonna vote on your amendments, we're gonna make sure that they all pass, and farmers and getting cell phones is kind of a no-brainer. So from a posturing perspective, it was a clever tactic at the last minute to ensure an amendment that may or may not have passed a up and down floor vote would have been, it was all but ensured in passing. So that's where we find ourselves presently. That amendment sits squarely within the context of the House Agricultural Committee's markup for the 2024 Farm Bill. And as I tell people all over the country on a regular basis, or certainly become sounding like a broken record over the last few weeks, this is round one of a 15-round knockout fight. There are still many, many more steps and processes that we need to go through in order for this to even become remotely close to being law. But what it does is it sent shockwaves through the industry as of that afternoon, because it would, as I mentioned, destroy everything we've all known to come and love. Now, most people would not necessarily need to put a tinfoil hat on to wonder where that language came from. If you look at a letter that was sent by the United States Cannabis Council to the chair and ranking member of both the House and Senate Ag Committee on April 10th of this year, that language from the U.S. Cannabis Council, I believe it's on the top of page 2, is virtually the same thing that was introduced in Mary Miller's amendment. U.S. Cannabis Council, for those that are uninitiated to that, is a very large marijuana trade association. They represent large marijuana industry stakeholders across the country. So by virtue of ensuring their market share and kicking us out of their sandbox, so to speak, they got Mary Miller to be their useful idiot in putting this language up and doing what she did to our industry. So I think that hopefully gives you a little bit of context of where we are. And I'm sure that JD, Josh, or Brett can fill in.
I think honestly, does anyone have any, just, the room's smaller now, so we can just have a dialogue. Does anyone have a question behind that?
I think it's maybe something you'll address in the next stage. I'm just curious, what the next stage is for this, the timeline we're looking at to ensure that people that are passionate about ensuring the next level gets deterred can mark that on their calendars, be ready to be activated while we're all here and charged up. And next, if in the next level, if we do our part and it is next by, is that it? I think those are two questions that'd be helpful to.
Yeah, the congressional legislative process is myriad and complex with many small steps along the path.
Similar to that, to a state.
Oh,
I
of
mean,
course,
it's very
yeah.
similar to the state
Yeah,
process too.
so there's a lot of little
more
things.
expensive.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that'll happen over the course of the next 6 months to a year. We also have a gigantic presidential election coming. So in consideration of the presidential election, a potential lame duck session, you know, what is the Senate going to do versus what is the House going to do? What are the next big steps? That's all still kind of up in the air because what we've heard and what could likely happen is the House may attempt to take this to the floor. And that is the House taking its final action on the bill and then kicking it over to the Senate effectively. Now, we've heard rumors that it could be 2025 until we get a farm bill. But I think, you know, stranger things have happened. They could try to fast track it. And so, you know, we're paying very close attention, but I think the next big thing would be the House floor vote, maybe the Rules Committee. So that could be sometime in the next 6 months before the election, but we're not certain.
And the reality is just, you know, because we kind of live, eat, breathe this thing is the fight's every day. I mean, we
That's
get
right.
updates from the Hill. We have 4 federal lobby teams on the Hill. We get updates every day due to the federal government not being completely organized. You know, it's hard to say. All indications, you know, say it will be 2025 for, you know, potential negotiation with the Farm Bill. There's an election in between there, as JB said. But the reality is, you know, we fight every day on the Hill. So, you know, we have 4 lobby firms and then 15 lobbyists up there that are actively, you know, telling our side of the story. Again, you know, as I preached earlier, is you know, our story needs to be told. People need to understand it. We're constantly trying to acquire champions in DC, which we've done semi-effectively. If anyone watched the hearing, you would have seen 3 House members speak up against the Republican en bloc, which was very strange. Republicans typically don't go against their leader, or Democrats for that matter. So, you know, the reality is the en bloc was a way for no one to have a recorded vote, so no one had to, you know, speak out, because this was somehow became the biggest issue in agriculture for the week. Which, given we're about 1% or 0.5% of the actual farm bill, it is, you know, it shows that we are being heard, and there might have been a misstep, if you will. So, you know, what we can say is, although we hear things constantly and it's always evolving, as we, you know, we're surprised by the en bloc that happened during the meeting, is you know, consistently we have to continue to make sure that we are fundraising for champions at the Hill. We are potentially engaging new lobby firms, and you know, all that needs to be done with more money, obviously, right? And you know, frankly, the association only has so much money, so you know, the next steps for the association specifically is to get champions in DC. Make sure people know what hemp is, what this amendment does, and explain that to them, and make sure that if it does go to the floor, because that could happen, and then we'll have another PR nightmare, because trust me, I did not enjoy 2 Thursdays ago. My phone did not stop ringing. You know, the goal is to make sure that we have the votes to kill it.
Yeah.
So that's the action plan, but that needs to be backed with money.
Yeah, I think just to finish up, what are some next steps that we as an industry can participate in? I think first and foremost, it's being proud of your company.
Yep.
And I know this is crazy, but I've worked out a theory, and I think our industry suffers from collective PTSD, right? What we're doing right now was illegal 10 years ago. I mean, you could have been thrown in prison for doing what we're doing. You know, I know some people who may or may not have driven with some cannabis in their car and maybe got goosebumps if they saw a cop car, right? So collective PTSD is a major problem, and I think one thing that our industry needs to do better is promoting itself. And that can start with your company. That can start with you just going on social media and being proud of your own company, right? Getting your friends and family to participate and share, you know, your post. I think the next step of that is, you know, getting out in front of big media. You know, the #1 form of consumer media in the United States right now is podcasts, right? Joe Rogan has a dedicated base of followers, you know, and I think people They commute, what's the average commute in the United States? 45 minutes. They're listening to podcasts almost every day. And so getting out in front of media, mainstream media, podcasts, social media, engaging with your friends and family, being proud of yourself and your company, and not hiding. We hear this all the time from whether it's Congress or state reps or state senators, that our industry hides, that we're not participating in government, that we're not actually going and meeting our reps. And thank God for Rep Ford coming today and illustrating how important it is to go meet with your reps. But I think next step is just being proud of your company, promoting your company as much as possible, participating with government officials, and helping us fundraise so we can get more resources.
Yeah, and on the media side, and this is what I've been, we're starting this campaign is the biggest thing that we hear at the Hill is, a couple of them are, you're unregulated, which is just a complete farce. And then second, the kids. So one, make sure you're selling to everyone that's 21. That's easy, right? The second thing is we are regulated. There might be some states that haven't fully enacted regulations, but being proud about the fact that you're getting regulated hemp, assuming that you're doing all the things, don't lie, but
well, like Florida, if you want to sell products in the state of Florida and you're from Tennessee or Kentucky or wherever, you have to meet Florida's regulations.
And that's a good example because we regulated Florida, or JD did specifically, and the team down there, and then they came back and said, you guys aren't regulated. It's like, well, there's statute, right? So how are we not regulated? So these are the things that we have to deal with as an industry, is saying, my campaign that I've been telling people to do is, at the end of an ad or at the bottom corners, like, get regulated hemp from herb, right? It's those little things that are kind of like psychological warfare that says, maybe a representative will come into your store and they're going to say, oh, this is regulated hemp. Like, that's a simple thing that moves the needle, especially for direct to, online e-commerce, having a page about why you're regulated. Like, these little things matter because the things that we have to fight up at the Hill are Doritos and things along that line, which we can deal with, but we have to start reprogramming, people, because we have such a wide reach on, I know people that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on ads a month, right? So let's get regulated hemp in the bottom. And that's good for your company too, to be clear. So, assuming that you are buying regulated hemp, of course, I think that's something that's so easy to do that says we are regulated. So being proud of it.
That's right.
Be proud that you are a legal operating entity that sells regulated hemp, for example. Safe, regulated, whatever you want to call it. Like, all these things matter, and we have to reprogram our industry so that we can reprogram at a national level. Like, hemp is okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
And I think on the heels of that, I would just add, by way of a show of hands, how many of you own a business?
Everyone in the room. Everyone in the room.
How many of you have invited state or local regulators into your business to see how things work? Okay, so arguably
A fifth.
yeah, a fifth, maybe a quarter. Open the doors, let them in, right? Engage, call them. Whether it's contacting your city councilman, whether it's contacting the police department, the fire department, engaging with.
Ask us. Like, if you send us an email, whichever one it is if you are, like, if you do reach out or you just want to shoot with a sniper rifle, we have no problem finding that person, and we will get them.
And I think that
we use the association's resources. We can get to anyone in the country besides maybe the president within 48 hours. And
I
there's
think
no question about that.
it's a very worthwhile exercise, quite frankly, because if the narrative is you guys aren't regulated, you don't want regulations, you want lookalike products that are marketed to children, open the doors and show them.
I love that.
No different than JJ, who said earlier, we have an executive board, we have compliance officers, we have someone who ensures that all certificates of analyses match the barcodes, the QR codes on these products. Invite them in and let them see behind the curtain. Because again, whether it's a function of hearing that our industry likes to hide, our industry isn't regulated, you all as business owners can help change that narrative. And at the end of the day, changing that narrative, A, fosters education,
B, it helps get rid of the misinformation that is plaguing this industry. And C, it allows you a better opportunity to engage within your community as responsible stewards of an industry that you're willing to fight so hard for. So to me, one of the best and easiest ways, again, not saying you shouldn't do a compliance check in advance, but invite them in. Let them know you're there. Let them know that, hey, we age gate. Hey, we make sure that we sell products in child-resistant packaging. Hey, we're not operating within 1,000 feet of a school, regardless of whether or not we can or can't. It's a decision we proactively make as a business. These are the types of things that put a really, really good look on our image, on our industry, and on you as business owners. And it's something that, quite frankly, you don't know what you don't know. And legislators, lawmakers, enforcement agents, they don't know. So consider that as a way of, helping shift that narrative, immediately.
And it's important to note just real quick, these guys are up for election. Crazy enough, senators and House members go door knocking with their staff. This isn't a crazy ask. I just want everyone to kind of to realize that is, and I realized it recently. I didn't know because I've never been in politics during election year, but these people literally knock on people's doors in their districts. I mean, it's crazy for me to think about. So if you're in their district and you say, I have a business and I support this many families, this many votes, they will come. I mean, it's not a hard ask at all, especially during elections coming up. This is not crazy to think. And then you foster a relationship with them, God willing, they win. Make sure to pick the winner. But then, keep that relationship going. Get their cell phone, talk to their chief of staff, talk to their legislative director. I mean, all these people, this isn't crazy, and this is as simple as picking up the phone and calling one of us or reaching out directly.
My mom used to tell me, I'm going to quote her here, the best way to ensure you have a clean house is to invite guests. I'm not kidding, right? You want a clean house? Invite some friends over and see what happens. You're going to clean the toilet seat. You're going to rub things down, right? It will make you better to work with regulators, right? I've met with many very powerful regulators, including some of the most powerful drug policy experts in the United States. And I guarantee you, they want to help. Many of these folks, many of the bureaucrats in government, many of them are altruistic. They mean well and they want to help. And they're willing to work with you if you're willing to work with them. Right. So if you invite them in, they might say, hey, you understand you don't have GMP, right? But if you did these 2 or 3 things, you'll be almost there, right? You can add gloves or hairnets or whatever these little small things are. The regulators want to help you. I know some
keep in
people.
mind your vote matters. I mean,
That's
again,
right.
this is like the perfect time to activate everyone you know because votes are everything.
That's right.
And if you want to know who's going to win the election, we can maybe help with that. So
This gentleman over here had a question.
Yeah, too.
So I think in regards to like transparency and what I'm down the curtain, I'm a partner in a company, multi-state operator, and I think the biggest thing is when we're dealing with distributors in regards to THCA flower, which is what we sell, is the testing in different states. I don't think there's a cohesive, total THCA and all that stuff, so people get scared, being prosecuted, and I think that's one of the biggest issues we see with people coming forward and trying to get local government involved or whatever. They're worried about their livelihoods, their products being taken, going to jail. So that's what I see as the biggest issue.
Just real quick, a quick suggestion is if they're a Republican, I would hide anything that looks like weed. So keep that in mind.
I think you make a very good point.
Yes.
Right. And so just one last thing, and a lot of people we're dealing with are foreigners and whatnot, maybe not all the way legal, and they're operating these businesses in these states. They're scared. Even if I tell them and I try to guide them, which we have, they're not open to it.
And in that scenario, this strategy might not be the best. There's a different strategy for everyone. If someone doesn't want to open the veil, my suggestion is please contribute dollars, right? That's the best answer. But obviously there's a lot of people that will. If you sell THCA flower, just to be frank from Brett to you, I wouldn't probably invite my representative in. But there's other ways that you can help, whether it's spreading the message or maybe someone that has a GMP facility. Like there's other things that you can do that don't necessarily mean you need to bring a representative in, especially if there's marijuana everywhere, right?
Well, I
air
agree
quotes
that
there.
we need to, but the testing that being worried about being prosecuted, I think that's the biggest thing. So I think you're right, we need to band people together so that they see it's not what they think it is.
Well, that's what lobbyists are for too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah, so I'm based in South Carolina, so there's no medical or recreational, right? So it's the same fear all the time. And guess what we did? We hired lobbyists who spoke our case, and we got a proactive bill on the way, right? So when you think of it that way, maybe it's not inviting people in that if you're not on the bus, you're gonna get run over, right? That, you know, that kind of concept in your state, that's where, I don't even know how to put it. Every industry spends money on advocacy, and this industry is no different if it's gonna keep existing, right? So South Carolina is the most like anti, you know, when I talk to legislators, which I've talked to just about all of them, they don't even understand what hemp is. They think it's like I don't know, they saw
Textiles, probably.
Yeah, textiles, or like one where like I had one legislator I talked to who like went to a convenience store and bought a hemp drink and didn't realize what it was, and then he got high during session. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's terrible. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So like when you're in that sort of situation, it's having lobbyists that then can massage the issue. Exactly, right. Versus you doing it, but that's why you hire them. But then they can bring you in like a better light, which is where it is for me. Versus like, because I'm on the same page where like if I bring regulators in, I'm nervous that they're gonna arrest me or something like that. If I've got, I mean, I don't do flower because South Carolina you can't have flower, but I guess point being, that's why you give money to an association, you have an association in your state, and you hire lobbyists to make this happen. So,
I mean, I don't think just what we're looking for, sorry, just maybe some guidance on how to.
Where are you located? Give me some context.
North Carolina, Greensboro. So
this is an easy one.
So when we receive testing COAs from farms, so basically work with a bunch of farms around the country who give us our product. We are buying legal product, what we know. So if regulators were to come in, or let's say one of our stores or distros were to get in trouble, they have the testing. They go and test it, it tests hot. So we're partially responsible for that. I don't know how to do an efficient thing where I heard in the beginning you said, you should do testing for your product. Problem is, we buy the product, we're locked into it. If it tests hot, oxidation, whatever the scientific term is, I don't know. We're stuck with the product. There's nothing we can really do at that point. So
What's your purchase agreement say?
I'm sorry?
What's your purchase agreement say?
I don't have the answer to that. But
I mean, I would just default to what the contract says, right? I mean, if you're being sold a bill of goods that ends up not being what you paid for, then maybe you could look at that as a way of getting back or getting compensated. But I think most importantly is, let's just say you're operating north of Wilmington. I understand things have been a little bit difficult over there recently. If you're buying something from across the country with a certificate of analysis that demonstrates something is less than 0.3% delta-9 THC by dry weight, and then it's being shipped via common carrier, USPS, one of your friends who likes to drive with THCA flower in their car, you know, I would make sure that if you are getting a certificate of analysis from someone on the other side of the country or someone halfway across the country or wherever it may be, they're not pushing that delta-9 limit as close to 0.3% as possible. Because the founder of the best cannabis testing lab in the world told me that you should be testing that every 30 days. And it can change that quickly. This is a very unique commodity in that, you know, if you put baking soda on a table, it's not gonna just turn into crack with a little bit of sunlight. But, you know, operating within a legal gray area comes with its own attendant risks. And so I think if you know, we're asking one of us to give you guidance or, you know, some sort of a blessing on, you know, how to do that, I think the best way that you can ensure that you're doing everything above board is either A, have a purchase agreement that gives you some sort of recourse if it's not as advertised, but B, more importantly, make sure that your chain of custody is entirely locked up from top to bottom, one end to the other, and that, heaven forbid, you know, you don't just take the farmer and what they provide you for a COA, you actually retest it yourself. Because at the end of the day, yes, you can make an argument that you lack the requisite criminal intent to be distributing a controlled substance, but any prosecutor worth their salt might do a little bit of homework on your website and see that what you're selling may be advertised as weed, may be advertised as the real thing, and therefore it would be really hard to hide behind I didn't have the criminal intent to be distributing a controlled substance. So unfortunately, that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but it's the real answer. So I would just make sure that you have everything documented from the beginning to the end, because that's, a gray area that, yes, there's a significant opportunity in the space right now, but, no things for certain. And, in North Carolina, until legislation gets passed, you're dealing with a variety of law enforcement priorities across the entire state. You're dealing with people that might be having a bad day. They might be fighting with their wife. They might be upset with the fact that someone might, be of a different skin color than they are. They might be just really sick and tired of the fact that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it must be a duck, yet I keep getting proved wrong. They're going to find a way to make an example. So ultimately, I think the best thing that you can do, like I said, have an airtight purchase agreement. More importantly, know what you're getting and know what you really have.
And I'd get introduced to Leo Valentine, who was supposed to be up here because he's the president of North Carolina chapter.
I mean, that was very helpful. It was. We are located in Jamestown, so right next to Greensboro, across the street from the sheriff's office. So we were operating for 2 years. They showed up one day, asking us, hey, we're getting this complaint that there's a smell here. Can we walk in and check out what you have? They did. Nothing ended up coming from it, but we went and tested our stuff. And in our purchase agreement, it did state, now that I'm thinking about it, that in transit, the levels of Delta-9 can change, and that they're not liable. So
I would also make sure that
get a better lawyer.
Yeah.
We work with Ron Kite.
I used to work for him.
Oh, okay.
We got a question right here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. My name is John, and just wanted to start out by thanking you guys for taking your time and for the whole series of presentations. It's been really informative and helpful, and much appreciated. I think great content. Just wanted to add to the comments about letting a regulatory agent in your facility or a state rep. I've been involved in the space for 10, 12 years. A model that for most of the small businesses here that really works, whether it's your home or the location of your business, especially between now and election season. You could set up a small fundraiser at your facility, invite them in, 20, 25 people, wine and cheese reception. That many small donor checks still adds up to a significant amount for a state rep. It matters. You'll get one-on-one time to talk to them about your issues, show them your employees, show them your product lineup, everything that the panel has mentioned here today. And plus there's dollars attached to it. It's really, really outcome determined. And I don't know how many people wait. There are 50 of them. If various jurisdictions, everyone went home and did that sort of reception between now and October, I think you'd see a real impact, a real educational component that we've heard from the state representative earlier that's really necessary, telling why we're not the boogeyman. There's no reason for us to hide in the shadows. This is a great product, whether it's medical or it's just also recreational. There's nothing wrong with that. And spreading that message, proselytizing it, the dollars that go with it, showing them that we're upstanding citizens is really helpful. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to reemphasize, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Unfortunately, we can't be everywhere at all times in all places in all states. There's 50 of them. And at the end of the day, these, the DC people specifically go home eventually. So, wherever you are, I mean, that's a dream scenario. If we had fundraisers, once a month for all the reps, and I mean, we'd be done. I wouldn't have to sit up here. I could go back home and run my business and, laugh and have fun again. So, just the littles, everything counts. And again, if you don't want them in your house, rent out a pub, do whatever. If they see vote, we have a joke, cash and votes. If there's cash and votes involved, it doesn't matter where it is at the end of the day. So
You can do it at your house. They'd love to. They'd love to be 10, 15 constituents. It all adds up for them and they love it.
Yep. At the end of the day, that leaves an indelible impact, right? Because they'll remember that event. They'll remember the 10, 25, 50 faces that they looked at in the audience, because you're giving them a platform for them to sell themselves to you in the form of, members of their constituency. But at the end of the day, by giving them that platform, you're inviting them in, and that, 50 faces, they're gonna remember that. Whether that's just $100 checks from every person that attends, that, again, adds up. And, it's hard to ignore those faces when a piece of legislation is in front of you that says, hey, we're gonna put all those faces out of business. We're gonna make sure that we get rid of their health insurance.
I once heard a statistic that the average legislator in the United States sees 3,000 issues a year. I promise you, they don't have 3,000 fundraisers a year. They might only have a couple dozen, and they're memorable, right? So we have to stand out, we have to participate, and as contentious as this issue has been, the more engaging we are, the better off we'll be.
Absolutely.
Sorry?
I'm from Iowa, so the Farm Bill for us was kind of old news when it came down, just because we were already facing legislation that really echoed it. So starting in July, we're not gonna be able to sell any Delta products that don't have more than 4 milligrams per serving and less than 10 milligrams per package. And the language surrounding that was very specific about the packaging content, so that it outlawed a lot of products that consumers and retailers, plus I'm guessing, that they thought were safe. But like you have mentioned several times about the bad actors in our industry, the people who are selling products that are either presented as alternatives for children or popular products. But like, I see things that don't even have milligram counts on them that are completely synthetic. And like, at that point, do you really trust the manufacturers? Like, it's, you've talked about big cannabis, but what about like the big hemp actors who don't care about what the things that you care about?
So, yes, if I can take that. This has to become a collective voice. The only way our voice, the panelists up here, matter is if we build a strong enough coalition in the industry that we can push back internally. We talked about trademark infringement earlier today, and traditionally trademark infringement is done by the private company, right? But even Mars Candy Co. is going to the government and saying, hey, there's all these small businesses selling hemp products, and some of them infringe on our trademarks, but we don't have the resources to go after 500 retailers spread all over the United States, right? So a lot of this has to be self-regulation. It has to be internal to the industry. But the only reason we're even up here in the first place is that several people at this trade show, believe in us and believe that we have the right remedy for our problems, but we need more of us. More people speaking up, more people pointing the finger, more people engaging with some of those bad actors and saying, hey, excuse my French, get your shit together, right? I mean, we're coming out of a 100-year prohibition here, guys, and it cannot be lost on us that we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save this for the small businesses. And if we allow that 0.5%, that 1% of bad actors to be the company that's highlighted and becomes, the poster child for hemp, we're going to lose. I mean, look at what happened in e-cigarettes, right? 2019, the Avali lung injury scandal that was on every news station in the United States was all blamed on Juul. One company who decided to use Instagram to advertise their products towards children, right? So
And it's just that simple. Like Juul, I mean, I say this, is like, I don't want to get Juul, right? Because Juul got screwed. I mean, like just be clear, Juul got screwed, and I do want to touch on this. I'll speak from the business. My company's a raw material company. We have 800, 900 clients. We supply a lot of the industry, and although I can't speak for all my clients, but 99% of them, I would say have legitimate products. What I tell legislators on the trademark infringement products, and this is 99% true in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but those are black market products. So whether they're coming out of California by black market legacy operators, whether they're trademark infringement, like all these things are illegal. So they're black market. So, I don't like to think that that's although, the messaging has to be done on the state, when we deal with this everywhere, to be clear, but, again, going back to that, we need to communicate. I mean, Iowa, just to be frank, and I'm really sorry that you're going through this, trust me, but because no one spoke up in Iowa, and we didn't have money, we can't help, right? So, it is our mission, and all the people that spoke today, to help out everywhere we can, but without state support,
we just can't fund it. I mean, I won't say how much money I spend out of my own pocket, but let me tell you, it's a shitload. You know, at some level, you just can't be everywhere, right? So, you know, part of the reason why CHAMPS has allowed us to have this platform, which thank God for CHAMPS, you know, is to have these discussions, again, proactively, so we don't get screwed in South Dakota or Iowa or Wyoming, wherever it is, because every state does matter. Because guess what? You've got 3 representatives, you got a representative from Iowa and 2 senators from Iowa on the ag kind of problem. Same with South Dakota and Wyoming and all these other states, you know, if the Senate does flip, like everything matters. So it's, you know, the association's position is to protect everything we can, given the infrastructure we have. And, you know, right now we're in scale-up mode, you know, trying to just continue to teach people what they can do on their own, how they can give money, how they can speak their message, talk to their reps. Like, there's plenty of options for everyone, but again, we need to get this message out, right? Because a lot of people don't know what like 3 years ago, if you would have told me I would be in politics and writing laws and all this stuff, I would have laughed at you, but here we are, 3 years later. As these people have known me before, well, Diddy, you know, Phil maybe before, but, you know, before the age of 27, I passed 4 state laws. I mean, that's pretty fucking wild, let's be clear. So, like, you can make a difference with your speech, with your money, you know, whatever it is. I'm blessed to have a couple of those things, right? So I'm investing everything I can back in this industry to see it flourish. You know, we need to make sure the Farm Bill gets passed with the definition as is, and we need to put state regulations in place, and we need to reverse bad ones.
Yep.
Those are the 3 things.
Yeah.
We need all the fucking help we can get.
Session exists to make changes, right? So if you're in a state that has a bad law, look at that as like firing you up to get people together to get a better one next session, right? It sucks, but it's, yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm one of the minority in our state that wants that, and I think that's why we didn't get a lot of pushback. I mean, I live in a town of 60,000 people, and there are 8 other smoke shops that all sell the products that I'm talking about that they're trying to ban, and that's where they get the examples for them. Well, how do we impose regulation on one set of products while also saying that these ones aren't okay, but the people who are selling those products don't care either way?
So it's, yeah, excuse me, I don't want to kind of laser focus on you too much as an individual, but how many times did you go to the legislature?
I didn't go, I did not make it to the Capitol myself. I'm a single business owner. I pretty much work 7 days a week, but I did email, I did call, I did the things that I could do in my power. And to hear at the end of the day that we didn't try hard enough or that we didn't have enough money, it sucks. Especially when there are people who are trying. But you're absolutely right about the people who don't, and they have their heads in the sand, and it's gonna get caught up. I'm all for regulation. That's what I'm doing in this room, and I want it to be as broad and as clear so that we are all selling safe products.
I can't. Go ahead. So you guys have the deck stacked against you to begin with in Iowa this year. Last year's law wasn't that great either. But, you know, I have a really close personal friend that, you know, owns a handful of stores that sell, you know, hemp-derived products. And, you know, much like yourself, you know, he is operating in a place where there are people that are selling products that are, you know, completely out of bounds. You're not, you know, in compliance with any of the applicable laws, and, you know, they're making money hand over fist, right? Mm-hmm. And my friend, you know, at a very deep financial sacrifice and a personal sacrifice, is playing by the rules. And I know from my experience with him that, you know, that hurts. You know, and my heart breaks for him every single day because I know the money that he's losing, I know the brain damage that he's going through, I know the heartache that he's going through, and I know how hard he has fought to change those laws, to make sure that the bad actors certainly don't have a place at the table anymore, but also to make sure that he can ensure the longevity and stability of his business. And it's something that he pours blood, sweat, and tears into every single day. But he still plays by the rules. So, you know, first and foremost, my hat is off to you. But having a close personal friend, you know, that I happen to be sitting next to, that is playing by the rules in a state that, you know, is all but trying to get rid of hemp-derived products, you know, it comes at no small cost. And so I don't want to sit up here, you know, on a stage and tell you, hey, you should have fought harder, or you should have raised more money, because that's really a non-answer to me. That's kind of a cop-out. But I think it's certainly something that we can, you know, engage with you on. You know, there have to be other people, you know,
Distros, for example, I mean, it's something that we can help with, is connecting to distros is the first thing I
people that are, you know, in your Dubuques, your Davenports, your Des Moines, you know, Moline, you know, all over the place in Iowa, that maybe haven't banded together yet, that might be able to, you know, rub some pennies together and fund a lawsuit. You know, maybe something where we can challenge that law, you know, and get an injunction against the enforcement of that law. I was on a phone call earlier today with people in the state of Wyoming about a lawsuit that we're getting ready to file there for bad legislation that got passed this year that, you know, has a very, very terrible consequence for that entire state's hemp industry. So while I will tell you that, you know, it's awful, you know, it's very unfortunate that you're dealing with that, you know, that doesn't mean that you need to give up. And it doesn't mean that you should immediately just run toward the direction of non-compliance just for the sake of that quick dollar. There are ways we can still help. There are ways that we can still, you know, let your voice be heard. And if it's, you know, vis-a-vis a lawsuit this year that then takes you to the regulatory table next year when the legislative session kicks off again, maybe that's the way we go. You know, so I would just want to tell you that, you know, certainly it's frustrating, and, you know, it's probably going to come at a great personal cost to you and potentially some of your employees, and my heart goes out to you on that. But I've seen it happen. I know someone who's going through it, and I hate that you're going through it, but there are still ways that we can help, and there are still ways that we can help you make a difference within your own backyard as well.
Appreciate the time and effort you all are putting in for this, so thank you.
One of the things, just to wrap that up, one of the things you can do is just like these politicians go door to door. Maybe you go door to door and round up, you know, I guarantee you between 25 and 50 stores you fund a lawsuit, no question.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
So, easily. So, you go hit up 150 stores, you might get 25, you might just make 24 best friends that you've ever met. I mean, we have become very close over this war that we're in, right? So, we are very good friends up here, and you know, it might take that, you know, it might be a couple of weekends of just going store by store by store by store by store and saying, hey guys, we got to put up 75 grand to put a lawsuit together, because that's how much it's going to cost.
Ping your customer list. Maybe their friends don't shop at your store. Maybe they still use the same products. You know, anecdotally, again, 6 degrees of separation, you know, outreach helps.
Yep. And don't give up, ever.
Don't give up, that's right. Anybody else with a question?
Okay. I saw her hand first.
Mine's really quick. I'm newer to the industry. Where would you say is the best place to stay up to date on? It seems like a lot of the regulation and everything changes very rapidly. Where's the best place to stay up to date on those changes really across the nation? Or does your company do that?
He just whispered to himself inside of his brain. No, because it is so dynamic, it's very difficult, because if a piece of legislation passes, you have to understand there's an entire process behind the passage of that legislation called rulemaking. The agency then has to go create the rules that dictate what that law is actually going to do and how it's going to be implemented. And because it's all very modern, it's all happening within the last 2 years, some of these states passed a law last year and they haven't even gotten through rulemaking yet. You know, it is very complex. There is no one resource. I think us collectively, often we sit on our GovOps calls and we put our heads together and we all look through several resources to combine and put together a sight picture of what it actually looks like in a certain state. You know, it's very easy to, and we see this a lot as well, it's very easy to interpret a law, and then the reality on the ground is actually much different than what's on paper, right? And so some of it is actually calling some of the local businesses and saying, what's the implementation been like? How many times have you been visited by a regulator? Are sheriffs stopping by? Are there raids in your state? So collectively, I think on this stage and through many of our other advocates, we can give you a sight picture on just about any state. But that's the benefit of membership. And to your point, should you join our association, you have free access to any one of us. You can call us, email us. We've got again, a long list of resources that we can use, whether it's a lobbyist, an attorney, whoever it is and get you the answers you need. So thank you for that good question.
Excuse me, saying way too much karaoke last night, so forgive me.
What song?
You did Creedence Clearwater Revival. I was very sea-minded last night.
In the seas, I like it.
I guess mine's more of a question and a statement, seeing as that, you know, just coming up again about these bad actors that we have inside our industry that don't follow any rules, that put products out there that jeopardize all our well-being and our livelihoods. As the association grows, have you guys thought about like putting out like a code of conduct or like SOPs that companies that you recommend should follow, things that people should look for on labels? I think it's time to start pivoting, and we need to educate the business owners more too. And I think, you know, something like a list or a resource where a store owner or manufacturer can go, hey, these are trusted, reputable brands, stores, retail, whatever it may be. You know, that would be a handy resource.
So a good friend of mine, Chris Fontes, is now the chairperson of a group called the U.S. Hemp Authority. He's trying to do this very same thing. The difficult part is hitting critical mass in internal regulation. How do you actually get 90% of any industry to adopt internal regulations? That's very difficult to do at scale, especially when you've got 50,000 small businesses, and any one of those could be a manufacturer, could be a distributor, a retailer. Getting that message out for internal regulation is very difficult, and it's going to be a big marketing problem. The best way to do this, and I mean this honestly, is if every company that came to us and was members of ours started pushing that narrative outward, you get to the second ring on that 6 degrees of separation. Then those companies do the same thing, third ring, fourth ring, fifth ring. Eventually you'll cover everyone, but that is going to be a long, arduous process. Now, I make this argument with legislators all the time. Legislation takes a sledgehammer to our industry, right? When we need a scalpel. That's the most common thing I see, is that because of lack of information, lack of engagement from industry representatives, the legislation just takes a blunt force object and beats the industry over the head. We need a scalpel, and one of those tools, one of the scalpels we could use is internal regulation. But the only way that happens is industry participation, is getting more and more people to do it. Because, you know, I could start right now and I could say every company needs GMP, every company, you can't have cartoons, every company, and I'm just standing on stage shouting across the room. It doesn't do anything. You know, how do we get more and more people to adopt that frame of mind? And that's actually what we're doing up here right now, is trying to educate people to bring them in.
It's happening. I mean, you know, in the like the big distributors in each state are critical of this. So, you know, for the bigger brands that maybe have a better relationship with some of these big distributors, they have stepped up. Like we saw them step up in Georgia, we saw them step up in Illinois. You know, even CHAMPS, you know, has brought us in and allowed us to platform us, which I know we're over time, so I apologize. But the reality is it is getting better. You know, and politicians, again, they do get that there's going to be bad actors. And you know, my new script, which evolves over time, is listen, this isn't hemp. This isn't regulated hemp. It's illegal black market marijuana products, and that resonates pretty well. And you know, as I say that message, I have to call my friends at, you know, big brands and say, hey, tell your distros to cut the shit, because that's, you know, at the end of the day, platforming Doritos or whatever people call it, you know, I personally, again, I supply 800, 900 companies. I've never seen this stuff before.
Yeah.
I know that it exists, obviously, because that's what I have to deal with it. But, you know, 90%, like, this stuff is coming out of California. It is black market stuff. This stuff was around 10 years ago when I was younger, when I was a kid. So they've just scaled up because they found the, you know, a distribution outlet through these retailers. So, you know, for now, again, you know, if you run a legitimate operation, going back is bring them in, show them a legitimate operation. We will continue to self-regulate as much as we can. It's getting better every day, and we will remove these products. But even when they are removed, just to be clear, I mean, if you don't have those conversations with your state legislators, they're still going to think that. I reverse image searched the Mary Miller photo, and it was used 72 different times. So they recirculated a, you know, trademark infringement wall of Delta 8, Delta 9 products, and it was reused 72 times. Like, you know, they're gonna reuse it. But it is, like, things are getting better, the industry is coming together, you know, and people are listening, including the distributors, which I think is a huge step forward for the industry, is we need help from the distributors. And then to say, hey, we're not gonna carry this product anymore. If we don't carry it, then they'll buy a legitimate product. It's like, it's not like people are gonna stop buying it because they're after burritos. It's probably gross anyway. Sorry.
All right, guys, speaking of which, we're over time. Thank you very, very much. Come see us after.